We need to help our clients get ready for a world of real-time 3D. So if you think about everything from the design of products to the manufacture to supply chain to get them into customers' hands, all of those touch points or all of that sort of value chain, digital reality can then be applied and drive value across that whole chain.
Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Robert Schmidt, also known as Mr. IoT. I am Deloitte's Chief IoT Technologist and have a deep passion for all things digital. Today on my show Coffee with Mr. IoT, I have here with me Donald Brady, a principal with Deloitte and one of our leaders in our digital reality team. Donald, thanks for joining. How are you doing?
You're welcome. I'm doing fine this Thursday morning at CES.
Awesome, CES, huh? So digital reality, what is digital reality?
That's our terminology for all things AR, VR, or MR, augmented, virtual, and mixed realities. That's our overarching terminology that we use to describe what we do.
So it's really this idea that you mix what we have on the phone with what goes around you, augmented, and sort of any form really what goes on.
Exactly, phone and also increasingly HMDs or glass form factors.
They were way ahead of times. When did Google Glass come out? 4 or 5 years ago?
It may be longer than that. I actually don't remember the answer to that, Robert, but I actually do think that Google Glass paved the way, and I think the error of judgment that they maybe made is they targeted the consumer marketplace first, whereas really the use case for that glass is in the enterprise.
Did you actually ever own a Google Glass?
I never owned one, but we actually did some very early work and prototyping on that platform. And all of the work that we did was really around smart factory or around guiding and checklists for employees, and we really didn't have any consumer use case other than the typical one that's sort of out of the box, the mapping or directions while you're walking around. I
actually owned one. I even did my own personal coding on it, believe it or not.
Oh,
kind
awesome.
Of interesting. So, but in any case, people looked at me weird, and my wife said, "Take those things off when you talk to me." She didn't like that at all.
Yeah, that's the thing with that form factor in a consumer or public setting is the glass. If it doesn't look like the glasses you're wearing right now, Robert, or something similar, it's kind of a barrier to communication or a barrier to person empathy.
Got it. So now, fast forward to today. You talked about the Consumer Electronics Show. You went to it. There's a huge part of the floor dedicated to digital reality, or as they call it, VR, AR here. What did you see today that's different? What excited you, what you saw today? Give us a little bit of your view on what you saw and where it's going today.
Well, I think you're seeing a lot of announcements around glass form factor devices, again, targeted at the enterprise. You're seeing quite a lot of participants who are demonstrating haptic solutions, so the addition of touch and other sensations into a virtual or augmented mixed reality experience. That's kind of an exciting dimension that this technology is going in, and the applications are myriad, from everything from healthcare to training for dangerous situations where that sort of feeling or sensation that you're doing something either correctly or incorrectly is really, really valuable.
So what are we doing here as Deloitte at CES? What have we shown? What have we done around digital reality? I'd love to sort of give us a bit of an overview and then maybe have a great story, like what really makes it come alive. Okay,
so we've actually used digital reality at the center of our marketing activation and our points of view at CES. So if you walk into the convention center, the Deloitte booth is front and center right there as you arrive. We're actually in the lobby, essentially, so we've sort of taken over a prominent position from a brand awareness perspective.
That's awesome.
In terms of the point of views that we're sharing at CES, a lot of it is around the future of mobility, smart cities, mobility, and we're using digital reality to tell that story to the guests that are coming to our keynote sessions, to our booth, and just weaving that story and that narrative into everything we're doing.
It reminds me a little bit, I have to sort of talk about my little baby, the rubber duck factory we did for LifeWorks, where I said, look, I want to bring a factory line to the show, and obviously I can't do that, it's too big. So we made a 40-foot marker, and when you hold your phone on it, boom, pops up a full-on factory line. Is that sort of like the same concept, where you bring things to life through augmented and virtual reality?
Exactly. We actually did that on stage at CES as well, and I think you're a pioneer in that. I'm not sure if anybody has ever done that publicly before you did it. Now we've done that 2 or 3 times, and it's an amazing way to bring augmented reality to life, and an amazing way to provide a really engaging storytelling session in any kind of keynote or presentation.
I have to say the thing that always, first, you know, we only had the completed app 3 days before the show, so there was a little bit of excitement around this.
Always.
But the thing that I think to this day is so funny, when I roll out this 40-foot marker and people pop it up, so first of all, there's this wow factor, right?
Yeah.
Suddenly there's something, you overlay true reality with virtual and augmented reality, right? But the thing that I always find funny is that it's not real. So you can actually, but people look at it like it is real, so they walk around the perimeter of the factory line, when in reality you can stand in the middle of the factory line and look inside the machine, because we made the inside work too, and it's sort of funny to watch people's behavior. How do you see people's behavior change with augmented reality?
Well, that's an interesting question. I'm going to maybe give a slightly different answer, which is when you're thinking about augmented and mixed realities, the star of the show should be reality. It should be the real world that's in front of you. And augmenting it or using mixed reality techniques to change what the user or person is seeing or interacting with, it should be in many ways transparent, almost like there's no noticeable difference in terms of reality and what you're perceiving through either your glass form factor or, you know, today your mobile device.
So that's really interesting. What you're saying is that the star should still be the reality versus the augmentation. Which in a way, the rubber duck factory, it's the other way around. Because actually the star is the augmented piece, because there is nothing else but a marker. So interesting thought, I'd never thought of this.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting way to look at things, that reality is the star. I think that's how you're going to get mass consumer adoption, frankly, is you put something on and your real world is augmented, or mixed experiences are woven in and they're completely natural. That's how you're going to drive consumer adoption.
So let's switch to some real examples. You're working with real clients on this. This isn't just something that's shown off at CES. What's a great example that you can talk about where we've done some really interesting work?
So I think what we're seeing is virtual reality, which I don't know if you know, but virtual reality used to be on the Gartner hype cycle. They've actually taken it off the hype cycle. They've declared it mature. And I agree with that assessment, and we're seeing a lot of use cases in and around what we would call immersive learning, the training of employees, usually to train them in situations which might be very dangerous or very time-consuming or otherwise very costly. So it's really sort of a health and safety benefit. And you're seeing, in my opinion, a tipping point here. You're seeing mass adoption within enterprises off that approach to training, and it really delivers real-world results. The business case is very, very solid. That's something we're seeing a lot of. I think the other area where we're seeing a lot of engagement around augmented digital reality, is in advertising and marketing, where we're looking to spur consumer engagement, we're looking to drive excitement, we're looking to use that as a vehicle to drive behaviors for our clients, such as exploration of catalogs, conversion, purchase behaviors, etc. Those are 2 major areas that we're seeing, and I think the next wave that we're also beginning to see a lot of interest in is in and around smart factories, an area of passion for yourself. And in many ways, digital reality can't stand alone. It has to be woven in with IoT and with other dimensions of solutions that make sense for a smart factory or other sort of transformative effort.
So I want to take this back and ask you about history a little bit because I find it fascinating. So you joined Deloitte as part of an acquisition, I don't know, how many years ago now? 6?
7 years ago now.
7 years ago of Ubermind.
Correct.
And I don't know if you remember, we actually met at the kickoff when I joined you at the kickoff when you joined Deloitte.
In Whistler, British Columbia.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And you were really a mobile development studio.
Correct.
And tell us what you think the parallels are about now what you do with digital reality, because it's sort of a new way of creating apps, but now they are in a different space, and what it was back then to mobile apps. Where do you see differences? Where do you see parallels from that?
So I think there's a lot of parallels to the smartphone and the sort of transformative nature of that adoption we've seen over the past, I don't know, what is it now, 10 plus years since the iPhone came out. So there's a lot of parallels in terms of the technologies, the approaches to development, but there's a lot of things that are different as well. With mobile, you had a immediate consumer adoption. You had almost an exponential curve in terms of people buying smartphones, demand for native applications, both from consumers and from our clients as well. Digital reality is somewhat different. We're seeing the ecosystem spin up, I think, on mobile with Google and Apple launching ARKit and AR Core. So you're beginning to see that mobile use case for mixed reality really become something that clients are interested in, something that developers are interested in as well. But we've got headwinds too, the HUD form factors, the glass form factors. There's some significant challenges in bringing that technology effectively to the market. So there's a case of some headwinds in the enterprise. And that's sort of the difference, I think. Also, in terms of developer skill sets, thinking in 3D is a very different paradigm than thinking in 2 dimensions. And what we're seeing is a lot of our most talented developers are coming out of a game development background, because that's really where 3D has been something that's in demand, or where the developers have congregated. It's natural to them, exactly.
3D, right?
Exactly. They think in 3D. They think in terms of engagement, and that's where the skill base lies today.
I also always feel that when you think of digital reality, it's all about creating an experience. Right?
Yeah.
When we talked about mobile apps, we talked about a storyline, or we talked about sort of like, we did journeys. Here we really have to create a full-on experience for the person that also has an emotional impact. How do we do that in the enterprise, or is that something that the enterprise hasn't embraced yet?
I think in the enterprise, with the sort of typical use cases, the storytelling is maybe a little less important. I think where it's virtual and you can't predict what the user is going to do, that's a different case. So for training purposes, effective storytelling and keeping them engaged is very, very important. And it can't be a linear sort of customer journey as you would traditionally think about it, because when you're in that virtual world, that is your reality, and you can do whatever you want to do. So it's a much more sort of all-encompassing, multi-directional journey, if you will. Typical enterprise use cases, which are much more AR or MR, a bit more scripted, or a bit more about aiding the employee. Like I said before, reality is the star, but giving them information that's relevant to their job, relevant to keeping them safe, relevant to keeping production or whatever it is running smoothly.
Interesting. So when I think of IoT, when I think of digital reality, I sort of have this vision of, even today when I pick up my phone and take a picture, why doesn't AR just come in there with surrounding data around me? What's hindering this augmented reality avalanche almost, right? Because there's tons of data around us. We always pick up the phone and tablet and point it at something, yet sort of this idea that we augmented everywhere isn't quite here. What's in the way? How are we going to get there, and how are we as Deloitte helping that path?
I think that's a good question. I think part of the challenges there, you have 2 extremely powerful ecosystems. You have Apple's ecosystem and you have Google's ecosystem. And while they're incredibly innovative, they're also in control of those ecosystems. So they actually are setting the pace. ARKit and AR Core are fantastic technologies, and we're going to see that developer adoption spin up. The launch of Web AR, the ability to view augmented reality directly in browser, is going to be a huge benefit to the adoption of AR use by consumers. So there's pros and cons to the power of those ecosystems. How Deloitte is helping with that is, I think we're just pushing the boundaries as much as we can with our clients, and in many cases working with those ecosystem players to better serve the needs of consumers.
It's interesting to me, right? You came in from an ecosystem point of view. What I thought first off, and I want to see what you think about this, is that actually who orchestrates and has ownership of the data.
Oh,
and
yes.
Sort of like really, it's sort of like, you know, you talked about how do I get it into the people, and there's like this split almost like.
Yes.
And then there is sort of like, how do I make the data available to people to share it? And I almost wonder, how can we help that in terms of making data more available? It's almost like today, if you remember, right, weather data was very proprietary. And nowadays, weather data and maps are just sort of like free, right? And what are we doing, what can we do around that to make data more accessible and more sort of like ambiguous for use?
Again, I think you still have that little bit of a choke point, to be fair, because of the ecosystem. So you have,
sure, absolutely.
You know, when people launch a native application, they launch maps or they launch the camera app. You know, where that data comes from is in some ways controlled by those ecosystems as well. I think there's lots of third-party players out there that were doing really interesting things, but we're seeing a shakeout right now in this marketplace. In terms of headwinds, you're seeing sort of a market shakeout. And you've also got really interesting ethical questions which are sort of raised by what you mentioned. So if you're viewing a mixed reality experience, who's augmenting or mixing in reality to Joe's Crab Shack? Like you as a reviewer, if you take Yelp to the logical conclusion, could write on Joe's Crab Shack, excellent service or terrible food. Who owns that virtual space? It raises really, really interesting ethical and privacy concerns, frankly, from an augmentation of the real world.
Yeah, I mean, this is true for news too. This sort of like really goes into how do you trust data that's in the public domain anyhow? So it's an interesting kind of question. How do you use digital reality in your life? I'm kind of curious. I always like to hear how the people I talk to, how their work life influences their personal life. How does it influence your life, both at work and at home?
So I think from my perspective, I'm always experimenting with new augmented experiences on my phone. That's really where there's a lot of activity and a lot of new ways of engaging. So just really always experimenting with what's new and what's fresh, working with our developers to get a better understanding of everything that they're doing. So part of my job is just sensing what's out there in the marketplace and being aware of it, and being able to bring in the best-in-class technologies or tools to solve client challenges. I want to just mention the class of Web AR, the ability to view augmented reality experiences in your browser. And it's, you know, if you are where I am in this industry, it's sort of a well-known use case, but to consumers in general, this is a very new thing. So the ability just to get your environment, to do plane detection, to be able to grab a piece of furniture and drop it into what you're seeing in a web browser, no app needed, and actually go through an entire conversion experience is pretty amazing. And it has real benefits to retailers. And the surprise benefit is not necessarily, in the case of furniture, say better conversion, it's actually lower returns, which is really meaningful to a furniture retailer.
Interesting. And in terms of your Magic Leap ones, tell us a little bit about that experience with them. What do you use it for? What do you play with?
So Magic Leap, I think, is one of the first devices where you can see the future. So there's headwinds with this type of form factor, but when you wear a pair of Magic Leap 1 glasses and you experience mixed reality, you can see where things are going. And if you apply, say, it's trivial to say apply Moore's law to that form factor, but if you sort of say double the power and half the size, you're looking at 2 to 4 years before there's something that might be really compelling and able to deliver mixed reality experiences to consumers. And that's, to me, was the really eye-opening moment when I put those glasses on.
Interesting. So we're coming to the end of our coffee chat here. I just want to ask you sort of like, 2 questions to close. One, what didn't I ask you that we should have talked about? And gosh, you work in this really exciting space, right? I work in sort of like the sensor side and giving you data, right? But you make the data into a new world, if you wish. It's sort of like, you create reality that's a mix, which I love. Tell us about your excitement and tell us what did we not talk about that we could have talked about.
I don't have an answer for that question, Robert. I'll have that answer after I leave this room and I go, oh my God, I should have talked about that. So unless it pops into my mind while I frame this answer for this next question. And I think, Robert, we've worked together for a long time. What I'm actually excited about is further collaboration between everything you're doing in an IoT space and digital reality, because it's an exciting space to be. It's on the cutting edge of technology. No 2 days are the same. And it has, in many ways, really meaningful real-world outcomes. So if you save a life by delivering immersive training, or you save a life by delivering an alert at the right time because something's going wrong in a process, that's a really meaningful impact you're having on the world. And that does excite me.
So one of the things you said was interesting. You talked about leading technology, right? And I always get sensitive, right? Because some people say, was it bleeding or is it leading? Oh. And I really feel like we are on the leading edge, right? Not bleeding. Do you agree with that? What's your thought on this? Because I know we deliver true value. I mean, we have millions of dollars of savings in factories now. And I think of living dashboards where you walk around and point that stuff. Do you think that's true? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I'd say that's true, Robert. We're on the leading edge. The bleeding edge in mixed reality, to me, is optics. It's foveated rendering. It's technologies that we as Deloitte are not necessarily delivering to our clients. We're relying on the ecosystem and others to do that sort of true bleeding edge development. We're on the leading edge of digital reality, sort of weaving it into everything we do and trying to deliver outcomes for our customers.
So I think it's important, right? And the reason I bring this up is because some people think, oh, they're just talking about something that's going to come in 5 years. And truly, it's here today. We can truly deliver things both on tablets as well as on certain class factors today to people. And they don't have to wait for 5 years. And it actually delivers value.
Yeah, absolutely. It is here today. And I think a big challenge for us and what we're doing is we need to help our clients get ready for a world of real-time 3D. So if you think about everything from the design of products to the manufacture to supply chain to get them into customers' hands to post-sale and the experience beyond where it's actually in the hands of customers, all of those touch points or all of that sort of value chain, digital reality can then be applied and drive value across that whole chain.
It's really interesting to me that you now talk about our users to think in 3D. Can you imagine how difficult it must be for them?
It's a real, yeah, it's a mindset shift. Well, I think some companies out there who are masters of the 2D world will build tools to enable those 2D developers to make that switch more easily than is required today. If you want to go from 2D, you're maybe going from an Adobe ecosystem to a Unity ecosystem. That's a big leap. I think there's probably companies out there that will try to make that transition easier.
It's so interesting to me, right? Because when you talk about this, we sort of work in different parts of Deloitte, yet we work together all the time. Because I almost feel like you can't exist without me and I can't exist without you. Sort of for me, in order to bring data to life, I need this space we're working in, and that's one of those things that really fascinates me, how actually we can't exist without each other.
Yeah, I agree. And the phrase I've been using, if I can say it correctly, is that IoT and digital reality go together like a hand in a haptic glove. That's the phrase I've been using.
Am I the haptic glove or am I the hand?
Good question. Let's figure that out.
Well, Donald, thanks so much. It was great having you on the show.
Likewise.
And with that, this is the end of our coffee chat today. If you missed any part of the show, please check us out on my YouTube channel. And you can also see there all previous shows. And with that, thank you so much. Bye.